AI, nay or aye? Hello, Dave here again from Creative Guitar Lounge. Seems like we hear nothing but AI this and AI that these days, and how it's life-changing and it can just automate everything in your life. But as creative people, musicians, artists, whatever, people who are creating things from scratch, is this such a great thing? Because I don't know if you've seen any of the kind of stuff that's around music-wise with AI these days, but there are entire songs being composed just by telling an AI engine what kind of song you want, what you want the singer to sound like. And I mean, I watched Rick Beato's channel all the time, and he was doing something about, you know, AI songs the other day, and he played a couple which he says his wife and son can immediately tell was AI. He couldn't, and I must admit neither could I, because they sounded incredible. But why is that a good thing? As creative people, surely we want to be able to create. I mean, the idea with AI is not to do all the creative stuff for you so that you've got more time to do the boring stuff like housework. You know, you want it to be the other way around. You want AI to be a useful tool to do some of the tedious stuff for you and leave you to do the magical creative stuff. And so is that actually possible with AI? So I must admit, I do have for a while used a few tools which are, I guess, AI in some way or another. And the recording system that I use, Logic Pro, has also, its latest update has introduced some AI session players. It already had a drummer that was kind of AI, and now there's a bass player and a keyboard player. So I've actually used the keyboard player, and I use that drummer and another drumming software, which we'll have a look at shortly, to create songs, because I'm a guitar player who can play a bit of bass. I can't play keyboards. You know, I can work out where the notes are and gradually put something together, but that's just not my bag. It's time consuming and horrible. So if I could get my partner, who's an amazing singer, is a great bass player, and she can play a bit of keyboard. We make all of our songs are written on guitar and put together and arranged and, you know, created basically on guitar. Then we add all the other bits. Neither of us are drummers, and we're not in a band anymore. We were for years, and we had lots of drummers, so we didn't have to really think about that. But I have found AI tools, and we'll have a look in a minute at Easy Drummer and briefly at the Logic Pro drummer. I have found those to be incredibly useful just to get a song done as two people with, you know, some skills but not all of them. So I think from that point of view, as a tool to help your creativity, they can be incredibly useful. So we'll have a look at a song. We're sort of nearly finished at the moment where I've used some of these things, and we'll have a look at Logic Pro and Easy Drummer and just explain how they can be really kind of useful without taking away the essential wellspring, if you like, of creativity. So let's do that now. Okay, so this is the song I've been working on for a while. I think it's actually funny. I've done a mix down of it, so we're just testing it on various speakers and so on to see if we're happy with it. I've used bits of this in previous videos because I kind of kicked the whole thing off with a little loop that I created on a looper that I had just bought and did a video about. But so anyway, this is briefly the song. So you can hear from that the drums, I think, sound pretty damn good, and that is Easy Drummer. So if we have a quick look at that, these are all the parts that have all been sort of spliced together really to suit that arrangement. And what I kind of tend to use with Easy Drummer is this little thing. When I've got an original idea, just a riff or a chorus part or a verse part, whatever, I can use this kind of bandmate feature, and this is sort of the AI part, if you like, of Easy Drummer. because I can just take that little riff, if I've got it as a little file, I can drag it in here and allow this to sort of analyse it, and it will whiz through, analyse it, and then it will go through all the MIDI packs, if you like, the drum loops that I've got in here, both that came with EasyDrummer and that I've added to it since, and it will make a whole bunch of suggestions for me. And you know, I can kind of audition all of these and listen to them and see whether or not I agree. And if there's any of them, as there usually is, that I think sounds good, I then kind of drag it into this song creator thing. And what that does is it gives me a whole bunch of suggestions of different parts. So, you know, obviously the verse and the chorus parts. When it's in the song creator mode, it will suggest all of these and fills and so on that will work with the initial kind of loop that it's suggested for you. And I find with very little tweaking, I can get that to work really well for most of our songs. And what you kind of do is you've got all these different genres, and these are really good drum loops or samples of session drummers playing in different sort of feels and different genres at different tempos and so on. So it will whiz through your sort of database that you've got of these. It will even go into EasyDrummer if you want it to, the loops that you don't have, but it can get you to buy if you want them, and you can audition all of those as well. So I find this a really good way. I can go in and edit these if I want to as MIDI. There's a kind of mixer where I can kind of adjust the levels. I can change even the different drums. I can change all of the different components of the drum kit if I want to. But like I say, I'm not a drummer, so I'll just mess around until I get something that sounds good for my song. So that, as far as I'm concerned, is a seriously useful tool, and I use it all the time. The other tools that I have got in here, which actually come with Logic Pro, there's a drummer in here as well, which is kind of good, and they've also added session players. So if I went in here, for example, to create a track, I can create a drummer track or a bass player or a keyboard player. Let's look at the drummer that comes with this. Kind of works in a slightly different way. And because I've actually gone and created an arrangement track in Logic with my intros, my verse, my pre-chorus, my chorus, middle eight, solo, all of that stuff, I've put in the structure, you know, according to however many bars it goes for. The Logic drummer will actually follow that arrangement and fill it in for me with suggested parts, and they're all what a drummer would kind of play, I guess, in those parts. So they would play something different going into the verse from a chorus or from an intro, and so on and so forth. And then you can go in here. The way Logic does this is you can choose whether you want an electronic drummer, an acoustic drummer, bass player, keyboard player. If I choose an acoustic drummer, then I can have all of these different genres to kind of go through. And that will give me a starting point with these kind of AI drums. And again, I can go in here and I can mess around with the different rhythms, the different components, the different amounts of fills, the complexity of it, the swing. I can kind of mess around with it to my heart's content. I can even cut these into smaller parts and change each different part. I can get to try again for different sections. So, you know, with a lot less work than it used to be in the old days, when you would sit with a keyboard and plod away putting the kick drum and the snare on different keys and, you know, trying to build up a drum track note by note is just the most tedious thing in the world for me. So these tools are definitely pretty incredible as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to delete that track. But what I have done on this song is I wanted a keyboard part. So I kind of went ahead and I'll just show you this again. If I go in and wanted to create, I can just go in here and create a keyboard player, and very much the same as with the drummer, it will give you an idea. It always starts off just with like a grand piano, and you can put in various parameters, like if you want full chords, broken chords, arpeggios, whatever. And again, it's got all the different sort of styles that you can use, and then, like the drummer, you can then manipulate it all to your heart's content. But what I did was, I did all that. I've actually mixed this down to audio now, so I can't really show you all the components, but it's very similar to the drummer. I got a piano part which followed the chords. I should have said earlier, what also came with these new session players is a chord track that you can add, and that's what I've done here. So there's a bit of work again involved, so it's not like doing it for you as 100%. I had to go in here and tell it, that it was the key is C sharp minor, and these are the different parts. I've got C sharp minor, A, B, and then onto the sort of chorus and so on, which is in E major, B, and so on. So I had to go in and manually put all that in, but then when I added the keyboard player, it knew all of those chords, and it kind of followed along with all of those chords. It wasn't a particularly good part, but I didn't want a piano anyway. But I did use it to then go in, swapped it for one of the audio instruments that come with Logic Pro, and put on a nice little synth part, play a little part of it for you. This is it, soloed. And then you can just song. So it's just exactly what I wanted, and could never have done myself. Just using these AI tools to give me a nice little kind of ambient synth part that I think works really well with that song. So that hopefully shows you how you can use this stuff just to kind of quicken your workflow, if you like, and maybe even to give you inspiration. Because these are ideas, the keyboard ideas, for example, is not something I would have come up with. And if you then take the bare bones of that and then put it into another instrument, get it to play something else, I think it's going to be pretty useful to me. Well, it already has been useful to me, as has the Easy Drummer. But what will happen, and this is the thing that I kind of object to with this stuff, and a lot of people seem to object to it as well, is that you could, for example, go into the loop browser with, let's just say, since we're in Logic Pro, you've got all these loops that come with Logic Pro. You've got acoustic guitar strum, and that's in the key of E. And there's obviously, you can change the keys on these, and there are all sorts of stuff here, and there are keyboard parts, and all sorts of loops in here. There's electric piano, synths, pianos, clavinets, mallet, all these little loop parts. And if you drag those in to this, it knows what chords they are, so you can use these AI tools to, if you say picked a drum loop or a keyboard loop, this will give you drums, bass, keyboards to go along with that. So people will definitely use this to very quickly build songs up just from little building blocks, but I guess that's what songs are. But without actually being able to play instruments, I guess is my point. That is, we're going to be hearing that. We already are hearing that. We probably aren't even aware that we're hearing it, but that is happening. But again, you could look at that as a learning tool, because if you start to actually, this for example comes with preset common chord sequences. It will give you, sort of 1, 4, 5, for example, to give you just a basic blues chord sequence, a typical blues chord sequence. But there are a whole bunch of presets, and it will actually, if you pick one of those, it will just chuck all those chords in for you, and then you can either play along or drag in your loops and so on. So there's a definite possibility for learning using this stuff. But like I say, just certainly so far for me, some very useful tools. So as usual, let me know if that was of any interest to you. It's kind of something that we're not going to be able to escape, AI, and maybe nor should we. I remember a few months ago when I first started looking into this stuff, I saw some podcasts, and it was one of the guys who actually kind of created a lot of the original AI stuff for Google, and he was terrified of what he'd done. He'd say, well, what have I done? These things will take over the world. Who knows? We'll have to just wait and see, won't we? But they could take over music to some extent. Again, who knows? But from my point of view, and hopefully you guys, you're here for because you're creative people and you want to create things. But there's a lot of the kind of that, especially if there's just one or two of you and you're working solo. anything that can kind of make that workflow simpler and a bit easier and maybe cut down on a bunch of the processes definitely works for me. And I think that is the good side of it. If there's a light side and a dark side, that's definitely the light side for me. I mean, I mentioned earlier on, when I first started trying to program drums, you know, that whole thing of, you know, setting up, routing a MIDI keyboard to different drum sounds, and then, you know, doing your kind of chicken picking thing with a kick and a snare drum, and then, you know, adding cymbals, and then with an old Atari, kind of drawing them all in. A total nightmare. If you can just get a little guitar riff and drag it into something that gives you drums, which you can then use to maybe give you ideas for keyboards or bass. Don't see why not. So let me know what you think, and you know, if you haven't subscribed to the channel and you want to hear more of this stuff, subscribe, and just give me a little thumbs up if you've liked this, because it really helps grow the channel. Okay, cheers for now. Bye.